right, thank you very much for staying tuned to the NTA. My name is Cecil Egbele, and it's nice that you'll be joining us for the next 1 hour. And I'll just go straight up to tell you what we're talking about today, dealing with addictions. Now, what's your addiction? What are you addicted to? Okay, I might know you might say, no, I'm not addicted to this. I just like this. Yes, along the line of the program, we'll get to understand what it means when you just like something, or you're just used to something, and when it becomes an addiction, or when you are just ambitious and then when you become addicted. There are many different types of addiction, where we'll get to learn these as we continue the program. When I'm told somebody that I think you are a workaholic, he went, no, I'm not a workaholic. But anyhow, but there are some tendencies, there are some things I saw about him. I thought that you just bury yourself all in your work and you are addicted to your work. He said, no, he wouldn't use the word addicted. But anyhow, we'll get to understand what addiction is as we continue with the program. Are you a shopaholic freak? Do you just have any money you get, or you just want to go pick something in the shop and all that? We will get to talk about this as we continue the program. Well, to set the tone of our program today, we'll take a background feature, and this background feature is put together by Semben Ochuli, and he takes a look at the different kinds of addiction, and then we'll be back to talk more.
Addiction is the condition of being hooked to a substance to create ecstasy. According to a review by Dr. Timothy Legg, addiction is now classified as a disease that affects the brain, not a personal failing or choice. According to healthline.com, there are two main types of addiction, which are chemical addiction, which refers to addiction that involves the use of substances, while the second, behavioral addiction, refers to addiction that involves compulsive behaviors, which are persistent and repeated behaviors. Chemical addiction appears to occur when repeated use of a drug changes the way your brain feels pleasure. The addicting drug causes damage to some brain cells. These changes can remain long after one stops using the drug. When many people hear the word addiction, they think of dependence on substances, such as recreational drugs. But if the word behavior is substituted with substance, it opens up the definition of addiction to all kinds of dependencies, some of which may be surprising. Whether it is internet, mobile phones, or bungee jumping, the desire to experience a high becomes so strong that the addict goes to any length to indulge in spite of any negative consequence. Though chemical addictions like drug dependence can be dangerous, behavioral addiction also has damaging effects on an individual's emotional, physical, or psychological health. Behavioral addictions can cause major damage. They are not poor relations or substance addictions. A gambling addiction or love addiction can destroy a family or an enterprise every bit as much as alcoholism or drug addiction. Abstinence is a behavioral addiction, has to be from using that particular behavior addictively. For example, a workaholic cannot stop working altogether, but has to learn to work for its primary purpose, creating something and earning a living, rather than fill up an inner sense of emotional emptiness. A shopaholic needs to learn to buy what is needed than buy what is available. Other behavioral addictions include plastic surgery, food, video games, gambling, excessive watching of television, and social media engagement. According to online platform everydayhealth.com, the internet or social media may occupy up to 11 hours of an internet addict's day. Studies suggest that compulsive internet use affects 6 to 14% of internet users. Today on the Medley Show, we shall be looking into the issue of addiction.
Okay, it's time to meet my guest after that background feature put together by Semben. All right, and my guest is a consultant psychiatrist. She specializes in addiction therapy, and she is of the Hollister Wellbeing and Recovery Center. She is Dr. Ada Ikeako.
Hello,
Hi.
Cecile.
How you doing?
I'm fine. You look great.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You don't look bad yourself. Okay. Nice to. I think can people really be addicted to things? Because many times you get to ask people, tell people that you are addicted to shopping, to drinks. That no, I just like it. It just keeps me company. Really, can people really be addicted, or is it just I mean, is it just a word that people just throw around?
Mm-hmm. So, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Health Disorders, you have only two behavioral addictions. That have been recognized by the DSM-5, because they're not necessarily refuting that you can have others. Namely gambling use disorder and internet use addiction. So, but it's not. The jury is out, in the sense that the decisions are made by consensus panel, based on peer-reviewed, double-blinded, randomized controlled clinical trials. And there's a dearth of evidence, as of now, reproducibility in studies to be able to include some of these other behavioral addictions like sex addiction, shopping addiction, and other forms of behavioral addiction. So they've only recognized two behavioral addictions, which is gambling use disorder and internet addiction. But you also have the chemical addiction, which is
we have the chemical addiction too. Okay, the behavioral, you said there are just two that have been recognized, but there are still a couple of others, like maybe not formally recognized. Yeah, so we're still going to talk about this as we continue. So gambling addiction, when does it become an addiction?
Okay, this is an excellent question. When is somebody just gambling, and when does it become an addiction? The hallmark is loss of control.
Loss of control.
Loss of control.
But people will deny the fact that I know I'm still in control. I know what I'm doing. You know what? Okay, I have just this 1,000 naira. Okay, now I have between having to eat with it, buy food, or gambling. Okay, now if I gamble with this 1,000 naira, there's a probability that I will get 15,000 naira. Why don't I just go for that? Am I addicted?
Many times when people become addicted, they're the last ones to know, because emotional health disorders are a subtle slide. And, a lot of people gamble, but when does it get to a point where you've lost control? When you're now spending excessive amounts of time, excessive amounts of money, when the gambling now, becomes more important than your relationships, it starts to impact on your work, on your schooling, where you're skipping classes so that you can gamble. You start developing depression, and other psychological symptoms as a result of either the money loss. The amounts of money lost could be excessive, more than you can even, afford to pay back. And so, there are 11 criteria when it comes to
11 criteria.
The 11 criteria. And if you meet like less than one or two or three criteria, then it's mild. If it's
for addictions generally, or for gambling?
For addictions generally. 4 to 5 is moderate, and at 6 is severe.
4 to 5. Do you have an idea of some of these? Because I would like the viewer at home to check to know if he or she is actually addicted. Maybe just give us one or two of them.
Okay, one of them is craving.
Craving.
So the urge to use.
Okay. All right. Craving, that's it. You can be part of this program by sending in your contributions, your questions or comments to our phone line 081 177 081 177 82020. The number is showing on your screen at this point. You listen to the conversation. She's going to give us some of this criteria to know if you are an addict to whatever. It could be to drinking, food, shopping, gambling, sex, whatever. Just listen to this. She's given the first one as
craving.
Craving. Are you always craving the thing, whatever it is, a thing, or it could be chemical, you said, or a behavior, right?
That's right.
All right, so we have that craving, and
then you have doing it for longer, or using it for longer, or in larger amounts than intended.
Okay, for instance, if you are addicted to work, maybe you work 8 to 4, but somehow you just find yourself working 8 to 7.
That's
you take
right.
the work home.
Yes.
Okay, you do
And
it
the
for
whole night you're still working, you know.
Yes.
So you're doing much longer and in larger amounts than is considered to be, you know, socially appropriate.
For those who love shopping, shopping is nice. No, please don't tell me that.
Excessive shopping is a sign of bipolar disorder in many people. So if you shop excessively, you need to get checked out for an underlying mood disorder.
What is excessive shopping? Wait.
Well, when you know your salary, when you get your salary, or even before your salary, you get an advance from the bank, and you've exhausted it, you know, within the first couple of days. Meanwhile, you're supposed to plan, and you know, and you spend it all, and you shop, and you shop and shop.
I don't know how familiar you are with Nigerian setting. Now, when we go for weddings or social occasions, we buy a shoebi.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a uniform. And many times, sometimes the uniform may be more than your salary, almost as much as your salary. You just go ahead to pay for it because everybody is doing it. You pay for this, you try to just look fly and slay, even at the expense of your pocket. What's that?
Well, you know, if you've lost control, where you have to do that all the time, there's that compulsion.
Yeah.
It comes down to compulsion. That something is controlling you. You are no longer controlling it. And in spite of negative consequences, you still continue to do that thing. You know, that is addiction.
Okay. Someone is sending a message here now, but please do send text messages or WhatsApp only on our phone line. I see a couple of you trying to call. Sorry, you can't call. Just text and WhatsApp 081-177-82020, which is showing on your screen at this point. I'll take a couple of messages after a couple of these calls. People just keep calling. Okay, you've given us some of the symptoms, kind of one being addicted. What else?
Well, sometimes you're using the substance or doing that behavior in a physically hazardous situation. For instance, you're drinking and you're driving, or you're using drugs and you're operating machinery.
What did you call it? When you're
physically hazardous situations, you still find yourself, you know, doing that thing, even though it's really dangerous to your life.
Okay, so you are driving, you are drinking.
Yes.
You know, it's going to tamper with your concentration.
That's right.
Or you are texting.
That's right.
You get people who tell you, I've been driving since 32 years and nothing has happened, so I can actually text and make calls and all that while driving. So that's one being addicted to the mobile phone.
That's an addiction.
That's an addiction.
You know, you're walking and there are potholes and you're on your phone, you know, and you know, you can fall into one and you know, and you can't stop.
And you can't stop. You can't just control
yourself.
You
can't control yourself. You're out of control, you know. And so that is the cardinal feature, this loss of control.
Loss of control.
Because you're supposed to know yourself and be able to control yourself to a reasonable degree. But when you've lost that control, then that substance or that behavior now has control over you.
Okay, so someone is asking a question, is when someone is addicted to smoking, what can the person do about it? Please do write tell us where you're writing from. Okay, what's the difference between OCD and addiction?
Okay, obsessive compulsive disorder involves intrusive thoughts, images that provoke anxiety, and so you have repetitive behaviors called compulsions, like washing, in response to intrusive thoughts about contamination, for instance. And so they're repetitive behaviors that are used to allay anxiety. So the goal when it comes to obsessive compulsive disorder is to allay anxiety. So you have obsessions and you have compulsions, and you can have either or both at the same time. So it's different where, yes, there's an element of loss of control, but the target is anxiety. You know, you're not going to have cravings, you know, and you're not going to be doing it in physically hazardous situations. You're not going to be doing it probably for longer or in larger amounts than were intended. It's not going to start. It may not affect your relationships, your work, your school, recreation, other areas of important areas of functioning. So these are characteristics of addiction, but there's some overlap, right?
Yes, I was going to is OCD a condition?
Yes, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, it used to be categorized under anxiety disorders, but in DSM-5 that came out in 2013, it has its own separate category.
Oh, okay. All right. So someone asked about smoking, how he wants to know how to get out of it.
Okay, that's an excellent question, by the way. You are 200% more likely to stop smoking if you use what you call nicotine replacement therapy.
Nicotine replacement therapy.
Yes, so you have the nicotine patch, you have the nicotine gum, the lozenge, or the mint, the inhaler. You also have medications that reduce your cravings like bupropion, varenicline. Those are the two that are used. And so you need to come in for an assessment and get started on nicotine replacement therapy. Set up a quit date, which is your date that you want to
Want to quit.
you want to quit, right? And then have brief intervention, what they call brief intervention, which is a psychotherapeutic modality for smoking cessation. It's a smoking cessation clinic.
Okay. We'll take a couple of messages, but I think we should take this one on work addiction. A feature now on work addiction. People can be addicted to their work, right?
Absolutely.
All right. We'll talk about it when we get back from this feature put together by Read One.
Often called workaholism, work addiction is a compulsive need to always be at work, even at non-working hours. Sometimes it stems from the desire to achieve success and status or to escape emotional stress. A work addict cannot stop even when he knows other aspects of his life and health are negatively affected. This behavior gives him a high, a feeling he wants to remain in constantly.
Anything that introduces strangeness to your virtues and personal values is a violation. It may even be good, but it's not part of you. And it does not support your growth and maturation. Anything that does not support your relationship in the good order, and you can't help but just must do it, is an addictive behavior.
Like many other addiction, work addiction can damage an individual's health, happiness, social functioning, and interpersonal relationships, especially family relationships. Those addicted to work would unintentionally detach from family and friends. Later on in life, they may end up becoming strangers, even at home.
Know the rules of work, try and do your best to keep to it, and then the regulatory system that exists in the workplace, know it. That's why there's no work you do that does not have work ethics, rule of work, and all of that. Issues that guides the normal functioning of an office relate with that. So when you know yourself, you know your surrounding, then you will be able to relate and interact well on a daily basis. With that, you are good to go.
In a society where hard work is praised and overtime is often expected, it can be challenging to recognize work addiction. People with a work addiction will often justify their behavior by explaining why it is a good thing and can help them achieve success. They may appear committed to their job or the success of their projects. However, ambition and addiction are quite different. While an ambitious worker imbibes proper work ethics, the workaholic puts work above every other aspect of his life. Here are some symptoms of work addiction and possible ways out. Putting in long hours at the office, even when not needed, is simply work addiction. Closing on time at work, especially when there is no reason to stay long, is work balance. Losing sleep to engage in work projects or finish tasks is work addiction. Having sufficient sleep in order to be in good shape to continue work is work balance. Being obsessed with work-related success only is work addiction. Being able to balance work and life-related success is work balance. Disintegrating personal relationships because of work is work addiction. Building new and strengthening existing relationships despite work is work balance. Working to avoid dealing with crises like death, divorce, marital or financial trouble is work addiction. Facing life's challenges as they occur is work balance. Ignoring suggestions or requests from others to cut down on work is work addiction. Welcoming suggestions or requests from others to cut down on work is work balance. Obsessively thinking about how you can free up more time for work is work addiction. Not interrupting personal and family lives for work is work balance. Are you wondering if you are work addicted or work-life balance? Then try taking a break from work and see how you feel. If you cannot switch up from thinking about work, you may have a work addiction. In all, life will always go on, even when you go off work.
Indeed, life will always go on even if you go off work. Come on, there are some people. Do you know there's some people who don't even take their annual leave?
Wow.
They just, seriously, people don't. Some people don't take their annual leave. They just work 3 years on the stretch.
That's poor self-care.
Poor self-care.
Poor self-care, which makes you more vulnerable, not just to mental health disorders, but also to physical health disorders, and it reduces your longevity. You're not only supposed to go on vacations periodically, you're supposed to go for day trips as well, where you take the day off. Or within your home, you can create a place which is your vacation within your home. You can make that a green space.
I like.
You can, use different forms of meditation like guided imagery, medical meditation, versus spirituality. And you can create a good self-care environment in your own home. So you're supposed to be practicing, adequate self-care. Unfortunately, we're not. And so we're dying earlier than our counterparts in other parts of the world because we're not taking enough care of us. So we're taking it for granted that you just work.
Okay, Dr. Ada, Lagos, for instance. Breaking news. In Lagos, they wake up by 4 o'clock. They leave home by 4:30 so they can get to work by 8 o'clock.
Yes.
Then they get back home about 9 o'clock or 9:30. And they have to get up. They have to have dinner, get back to work again. They do that like 5 or 6 days in a week.
That is insane. That's insanity. How can you live till 100 years old when you're behaving like that? What are you doing? Are you taking like power naps when you get to work? Because you must be exhausted.
Nope.
Are you taking massage? Are you doing deep breathing? Are you doing mindfulness, meditation? Are you going for your preventative care appointments? What time is there to exercise? Do you take the hour at lunch to exercise? I mean, what's the counterpunch to this kind of behavior?
For those who are almost, because as it is, many people even live at work because they spend longer hours at work than at home. So if you find yourself always being at work doing something, how can you take in between to actually...
You have to insist that the work spaces become more self-care friendly. First of all, they have to be green spaces. In a lot of places, they have even mini gyms, treadmills, they even build their buildings for those who are building where they're going to work so that there's, some element of, maybe a trail or a way you can walk around the building. Because, people need to produce, we need to pay taxes, innovation, and what have you.
Okay, well, in real, this is Welcome Home. I think maybe sometime when you're speaking, speak Nigeria.
How so?
Nigeria.
How so?
Well, anyhow, the good thing is that within the NTA premises here, we have quite a lot of green areas.
I think so.
Yes, maybe when we're done, I can even take you around. We have quite some places.
I think so.
And I see people from time to time who take these works.
That's right.
Let's take a couple of these messages as they keep coming in. I'll ask maybe about 2 or 3 questions, so we'll see as many as we can take very quickly. How can one deal with addiction from pornography and masturbation? This is Stanley asking from Jos. I'll take another. Okay, someone is asking about masturbation already. Is it a sin? Is it an addiction? Someone else is asking, good afternoon, I'm Treasure from Ondo State. I'm addicted to internet, and it's all because I'm always lonely. Internet happened to be my friend, and I can't do without it. Please, what can I do?
Yeah, so some of the commonest reasons why people are addicted is that they're angry, they're lonely, they may be self-medicating against underlying psychological problems that have not been diagnosed, and they're looking for something, the answer, to help them feel better about their situation. For instance, one of your texters, said that she's lonely.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the trigger. You want to look at what is associated with this kind of behavior, with this addiction. What is it that is always happening before you do it and after you do it, and why you're doing it, and what kind of thoughts are you having, and so you have to understand what are the precipitating factors, the perpetuating factors, what are the factors that made you more vulnerable. Another thing is that addiction is a genetic disease. We now know that 50 to 70% genetic is 50 to 75% genetic. And so, two people will use the internet and one person will have control and need limited and the other cannot, and there's that genetic vulnerability to doing it in the first place.
When I'm on the internet, at what point do I know that, okay, I think you're getting, my head is aching already, I'm still on it, I just
That's right.
know, yes, I know that, because there's so much to consume.
That's right.
Yes.
And part of good self-care is having times in the day where you are unavailable. You close down your phone, the internet is off, you have to have those times because your brain has to reset. It has to recalibrate. It has to rest. What we're having is a generation of people who have attention deficit. They're not able to maintain focus. Their attention span is so short. And it's all because they're overusing, they're abusing, they're overstimulated by the internet. Okay. And so healthy self-care means that you limit the times that you are not doing these things on a daily basis.
All right. Take quickly the question on masturbation, very quickly. Masturbation and pornography is asking, is it an addiction and how can I deal with it?
It can be an addiction, this is controversial. I remember having this debate in a place where somebody said it was sinful from a pastoral viewpoint, and somebody said it was normal. Everybody masturbates. So there was this full range of thinking when it comes to masturbation, depending on what religion and religious orientation that you come from. Some people say, no, I've never masturbated in my entire life. It got to that point where, that was, so it's interesting, curiosity about sexuality and touching yourself is considered to be normal part of physiological development. But when it's excessive, you can't stop all the time, all day, every opportunity. You neglect relationships, you isolate yourself so that you can be touching yourself. So it's maintaining that balance. And that's why many times when people are addicted, it's their loved ones that are the first to notice, look, you're changing. Your behavior is changing. The way you're behaving, is no longer.
It's not normal.
It's not normal. It's excessive for you. We know you're normal.
Okay, let's just while we're at this, let's just take sex addiction. How bad can it be?
It can be really bad. You can have people that have like 100 sex partners, or 10, 50. And so, but you have to screen for co-occurring disorder because hypersexuality is one of the hallmark symptoms of bipolar disorder. And so you have to be screened for anxiety. So people use sex to medicate themselves against underlying anxiety. Sex becomes a compulsion. You talked about OCD. And so you have to have a full diagnostic interview and examination. And then, what you're complaining about has to meet, criteria. And then you can have a diagnosis and then apply evidence-based treatment to that diagnosis. So the gist is, does it meet the hallmark of an addiction? Is there craving? Is there negative consequences? Is there compulsive use? Has it affected relationships? At work, are you doing it? You're not supposed to be doing that at work, but maybe you're doing that at work. At school, do you spend time in the hostel instead of being in class because you're masturbating? So what impact has it had on your life in terms of your functioning? Because we want to know the impact on functioning. That is the hallmark between a psychological disorder and something that's just a variant of normal. It has to have some impact on your functioning.
All right, so thank you very much. Yes, if you have too much sex, okay, or I've just asked on the sex addiction. I'm James from Benin City. I like your program. Oh, thank you very much, James. Hi, I'm Olajide from Kaduna. What's the difference between addicted and using your talent excessively? Okay, what's using your talent excessively? Like you like reading and you're always reading, you're asking if it's an addiction. Can that be an addiction?
If you overdo it.
If you overdo it.
So how many hours a day are you doing it? What are you giving up in order to do it? Are you able to fulfill what they call major role obligations? So your responsibilities as a wife or as a husband or as a daughter or a son, auntie, uncle, are you still able to maintain? One of the key things we look at is the strength of your relationships. Has that addiction now become the most important thing in your life, where every other thing is secondary to that particular kind of behavior or chemical substance.
Okay, thank you very much. I see more messages. What if a man keeps spending in order to keep his account away from dormancy? Perhaps money is meant to be spent. Is it an addiction? Mr. Kessie Enuma, I know you are just kidding. I know you are just kidding.
That sounded like a joke to
That
me.
sounds like a joke. All right. And what's not a joke is if you keep eating and eating,
That's
and
right.
you're always eating or drinking.
That's right.
That can be an addiction. And let's take this feature on food and drink addiction, and then we'll be back with our conversation.
Addiction comes in various forms. Food and drink addiction is one of many that has become entrenched in the life of some individuals. Addiction is evident when the situation becomes a can't do without. Food is an essential of life. It is the source of nutrients and energy that keeps a body functional. However, like every other thing of life, proportion and control are vital to managing our intake of food and drinks. Easy to conclude that some people are food addicts, eating anything and everything that comes their way. They just can't stand an empty bowl for minutes. They eat solely for the purpose of eating. Experts have classified this behavior as an addiction to deal with certain emotional and psychological needs. Depression, abuse, and low self-esteem in some cases trigger excessive consumption of food and drinks. Consumption of alcoholic beverages, especially by men, has become increasingly addictive. A research carried out by Oxford University in the UK in 2018 reveals that routine consumption of gin, liquor, and other kinds of alcohol by working-class men was largely due to the need to relieve work and family-related pressures. In other words, it is about finding some other kind of distraction, which explains their resort to alcoholic addiction. Some of the health implications of this addiction to food and drinks include obesity, liver and kidney failures, diabetes, cancer, and other forms of allergies. People do not enjoy talking about their addictions because it is not something they are proud of. For some, they have tried multiple times to overcome their addictions, but all efforts prove abortive. It starts from days to weeks, then months and years until it becomes habitual. To combat any form of addiction, discipline and moderation are vital. Nothing must be done in excess or out of control. So while you satisfy your cravings, you must make conscious efforts to eat and drink in moderation.
Clear of controversy, or do we dive into controversy here?
Stay clear.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So that's food and drinks addiction. Just while that was on, I was reading a couple of messages. Many of you are saying quite some funny messages, and well, I'll just leave some of those. Let me just take some of these messages, and then we'll talk a little more. Hello, good afternoon. I'm Aisha from Jos. I'm addicted to love. What can I do? Okay, we're addicted to love. And that seriously, Aisha. Okay, so let's take another one. Good afternoon. I'm Eze Sunday from my boy. Does addiction have any positive effect? Does addiction have positive effect? Okay, that's one. Let's take another. My name is Omasheye from Delta State. Please, if you eat too much, is it food addiction? All right, we'll just take it quickly.
Okay, yes, addiction has positive effect. That's why people do it. You know, if it didn't have any positive effect, nobody would do it. So it's the feeling of pleasure. You know, it's euphoria, the high you get. You know, there's release of a chemical in the brain, in the ventral tegmental nucleus, the nucleus accumbens, and what that makes you feel is on top of the world. Like you're on cloud nine, like you're flying, you know, you feel so good about yourself, relaxed, more sociable. I mean, you know, increases your energy, improves your performance. Some chemicals may help you lose weight, maintain your weight. So there's always a benefit, and that's the trade-off. We have to learn from each patient what is the beneficial aspect of what they're doing so that we can find other ways that they may be able to achieve, you know, similar benefit without necessarily undergoing the negative consequences of utilizing those substances or that particular behavior. So that
Okay, that's for that. So I think that goes same for food. So just keep that. All right, let's take this person. Hello. How can you control or avoid being addicted to a particular behavior like sleeping? My name is Winifred Agbata from Makodi. Can sleeping be a problem?
Well, you have excessive sleeping, which is hypersomnia. Then you have no sleep at all, which is insomnia. And so sleep disorders are characteristic of a lot of drugs of abuse, some in withdrawal, some in intoxication, also underlying mental health disorders like depression, for instance. You could have sleep disorders. And so the thing is to diagnose. Medical problems can cause sleep disorders like obstructive sleep apnea. So the thing is you have to take a full sleep history. You have to understand how many hours the person sleeps at night, whether they feel rested, the next day, whether they have a routine, a pre-bedtime routine. So a comprehensive sleep history, is needed before you label a sleep disorder an addiction. Before you label anything an addiction, you have to make sure that there's not another psychological disorder
That's trying to address.
Yes, it's trying to address.
Okay, so this still in line. Someone is talking about sleeping pills. He keeps taking sleeping pills. Is it an addiction? He always needs the pills to sleep. He's asking if that's an addiction. Daniel from Abuja, Lokogoma.
Yeah, well, it looks as if he is abusing those pills, Are they prescribed? Does he take more than what is the daily recommended dose? So the amount, the frequency, whether it's prescribed or not prescribed. Is it a form of escape? A lot of addiction is as a result of people wanting to escape negative circumstances. Does he have an underlying mental health disorder that would more likely, help diagnose a sleep disorder? Does he have a primary or secondary sleep disorder? So these are some of the questions that we'd have to get answered before we can, qualify it as something that is addictive.
Okay, someone is asking that you should please throw some light on chemical addiction.
Okay, chemical addiction, you have different classes of chemicals. You have stimulants like cocaine, amphetamines, you have marijuana, you have hallucinogens, you have tobacco, right? Even caffeine.
Oh, okay.
Caffeine can be addictive. Alcohol, that's considered a social lubricant. A lot of people do not believe you can be addicted to alcohol because it's considered to be a social and, a commonly used substance. The commonest addiction you have in Nigeria right now is marijuana. Then you have opiates where you have tramadol, codeine. You have injectables like pentazocine, pethidine. Then you have other drugs like alcohol and so have you. We're twice the global average when it comes to addiction, which is, to me, it's like, no, why is this the case? That's based on the UNDOC report that was, published in 2019, and so, we have to ask ourselves some serious questions. Why is this happening? Why? And there are many reasons, there's availability, and more availability, there's a higher potency, so the marijuana that's being grown and used now, it's like almost 10 times or more more potent than the marijuana that was being used 10 to 20 years ago.
Wow. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Frank. I'm a crack addict, and I know it's hard to stop, but I would want to know how I can stop. It's very addictive. Do you have any way I can Do you have any ways I can try to stop it? Please read mine. Okay.
So yeah, this is a very good question. Why are people not able to access treatment? We don't have enough treatment centers. There should be one in every state minimum. So we don't. There's states that don't have any form of treatment center. That's one of the problems, lack of availability. Cost is another thing. We need treatment centers to be subsidized by the government, in partnership with the private sector so that people can have them, these centers readily available and affordable. Another thing is stigma. We have to have campaigns, which I think NTA is so socially responsible, and psychologically minded, and that's a wonderful thing, because we have to have campaigns that address the stigma. One of the major reasons why people are not, accessing treatment are because of stigma associated with mental health in general, addiction specifically, and treatment for addiction even more specifically. And so these are some of the issues.
Okay, so we'll go on to take a Vox Pop very soon, but let me take a few messages here. Good afternoon, Ma. I'm Joy from Just. Can someone be addicted to internet, and how can it be controlled? We've taken that already. Good afternoon, please. What if I do shopping every month? Is that an addiction? If it's excessive, come on, there's an addiction. But if you're still within your means and your shopping is something you can do without. I mean, sometimes when you just shop like your life depends on it, then that's when you're getting to a problem. Good afternoon, presenter. Please, can one be referred to an addict to reading every day? Because I can't stay a day without reading a newspaper, be it online or offline. This is Nader from Port Harcourt. Can reading be?
I mean, personal development is part of the treatment for addiction, and one of the easiest ways to develop yourself is by reading, because in reading you can transport yourself to different localities, different times, become different people, take on the characters of the personalities that you're reading about. So reading is very important. Excess we're talking about. Are you reading and neglecting your relationships? Are you reading and neglecting your work? Is the thing you're reading affecting your studies? Is it affecting you from being a reasonable human being in society? How long are you reading? How frequently? And so these are some of the questions. Do you have the urge to always read? Are there cravings when you're not reading? Do you feel not normal when you're not reading? And so, reading in itself is not bad, but it's when it's taken to excess that it could be problematic.
All right, when it's taken to excess, whatever it is,
that's right.
That's when it's going to be problematic.
That's right.
All right, we went on the streets to ask these questions on addiction, and this is what you said.
I'm not addicted to anything, to be frank with you. But because I have self-control, I drink alcohol. Do you understand? Formerly, I smoked, and I stopped it.
I'm addicted to phone actually, but that was due to my work. I was not addicted to phone, but my work, I have to be responding to chats, responding to mails. My data is on 24/7.
I'm addicted to TV somehow. I'm addicted to food because I like food. I like eating food. But I don't drink, I don't smoke.
I can't stay without music. I can't stay without music. Music is my life. Music is part of me. If I live here and I'm going to plug my earpiece, I listen to music.
Addiction comes in both ways. There's negative addiction, there's positive addiction. So mine is anything good, anything negative, I'm out of it.
News is my addiction because growing up, most of the information I get is from listening to news, reading newspapers. So I got addicted to it.
All right, thank you very much. If you're just joining us, this is the Medley Show, and my name is Cecil. I'm having an interesting chat on addiction with Dr. Ada Ikeako. Thank you very much, Dr. Ada, for remaining with us.
Thanks, Cecil.
We have so much to talk about. I am addicted to something. I suppose addiction to something is what you do. Okay, this message is not so clear, so I'll skip that. Someone else said he was addicted to gambling and he has not gambled for 42 days.
Yeah.
And he doesn't feel the urge. Yes. Woo. I know. That's good. So wait, take a peep into, tell us what happens when someone with an addiction comes to you. Let's take gambling. Let's take gambling, for instance. How do you get to manage this person?
Okay, first of all, you do a psychiatric assessment, which is a history, a physical examination, a mental status examination. The history involves presenting complaint, why you're here, history of present illness, past psychiatric history, substance use history, and past medical and surgical history, family history, social history, forensic history, relationship history, employment history, educational history, work history, review of systems, and then mental status examination, and then a physical examination. When they've met certain diagnostic criteria, we talked about 11 criteria. So if you've met, depending whether it's mild, moderate, or severe, then a determination is made whether you're best seen as an outpatient or inpatient. Intensive outpatient has good outcomes, but the best modality is inpatient because that separates you from the behavior
Yes.
or the substance in question. So you're in enclosed space.
Yeah, but when you go back, you see the thing and you see that thing again and you just want to say, okay, just a little bite.
That's right. Well, there's greater exposure, right? In the interim, now that you've been removed from that behavior or those substances, coping skills. You now learn more coping skills. You learn more about triggers, how to manage your triggers, how to manage your cravings, assertiveness, how to say no, and a cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational enhancement therapy, and a whole gamut of psychotherapies, 12-step facilitation, which is the gold standard. And so these are applied to the individual. Addiction is a chronic relapsing disease. That's the point. The relapse rates are 40 to 60%, the same as for diabetes or asthma or any other chronic disease. So, we do have high relapse rates, but, some of our goals are measured, they're SMART goals, and we want to see people staying for longer and longer periods. That guest that texted, that said he hasn't gambled for 42 days, it's really important for us to use positive reinforcement. For you to, as you're keeping tabs, you're rewarding yourself. Like every week where you haven't gambled, every day that you haven't gambled, it doesn't have to be expensive. You could take yourself out, or you could just even give yourself a hug in the mirror. Someone could give you a high five in the house. There should be new traditions around recovery, around abstinence. You know.
Do you know you're Igbo?
Yes.
I don't know how much you speak.
Oh, Bella.
Okay. No, there's this whitish chalk-like thing. I don't know. I think they call it Igbo, call it nzu.
Yes, nzu. Yes, that's right.
Someone is asking when someone is addicted to licking it.
Oh
that
my.
thing, and commonly called. Yeah, how can he get to stop? Say he's addicted to always wanting to lick it.
Wow. I think there's some chemicals in nzu.
Yeah.
It's almost like potassium permanganate,
something like
which accelerates the heart, increases the heart rate. So is he trying to get high off it?
I guess maybe it gives him some high.
Yes, I think it's the euphoria that he may be pursuing, or is it underlying anxiety, underlying depression, and he's trying to get the lift? Is it feeling of social inadequacy and he's trying to get the lift? I mean, why is he doing it? What does it do for him? What are the positive aspects of his doing it?
All right. I guess for you, I'll tell you how to contact Dr. Ada so you can actually get a follow-up on that. All right. Meanwhile, earlier we talked about internet and social media addiction. And here's a spoken word by Capsi Joshua on social media addiction.
A syndrome it is, a new normal, they say. It is in the world of telecommunication, another invention, arresting everyone's attention. Call it a total addiction. The mobile phone it is. Humans glued to it day and night, engaging the brain, sleep being deprived, rest being shortened. Its light reflection, toxic to the human eyes, drying up tears, causing loss of sight. From the driver texting while driving, to the man walking on the street, home with a hunchback so engrossed with the device, seeming none can survive without it. From the family dining table, to the toddler at home, all holding on to it. From online marketing, to victims of cyberbullying, it's all so mind-boggling. Lured by the advent of this social media, the world is held spellbound. This small yet powerful apps is now a time killer. From the smart executive to the college student, all buried to the internet community, grades and deadlines being missed out. It has become a phobia not to have a mobile phone nearby. So, for this fear, a new word is coined. Nomophobia. It's the phone and social media syndrome.
All right, and that's a spoken word piece on use of the internet and social media. All right, so let's take a few of these messages. I always like to be alone without talking to anyone. I always feel like hitting anybody that tries to talk to me. Is that an addiction? Turayo from Ibadan.
So, you're moody, right? So you may
Yeah.
have mood swings, you're irritable and you lash out over the slightest thing. So you need to come and be assessed for a mood disorder and be counseled. Communication skills, a lot of us, take that for granted. But there's an assertive communication which people who are addicted need to learn. So that's the difference between being passive, which is everyone is riding over you, or aggressive, where you're lashing out or fighting, and then assertive, where you have mutual respect for yourself and for the other person. And striking that balance, this is really about balance, right? And so, I think, from what the description of the text, it's to be screened for a mood disorder.
Mood disorder.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, presenters. I'm a biochemist. I use Nescafe. Nescafe is like a coffee.
That's right.
To study when the person is studying so that he will not sleep. But after graduation, I cannot sleep again at night. Please help.
So, probably, he's had caffeine intoxication, caffeine withdrawal, and now, is he still using the coffee? I'm not clear. He said he stopped, right? But he's still not able to sleep. So he might have to be assessed for an underlying sleep disorder, whether primary or secondary, insomnia in this case, and that's a whole gamut of, questions. And, you do sleep studies, at some point, where you watch, for ocular, EEG, EKG, and, other assessments. And so, congratulations that you stopped using caffeine if it was causing you to not sleep. And so we now have to assess you for an underlying sleep disorder. We have to assess you for mood disorders as well, because a lot of mood disorders in the night, you're awake, you don't need to sleep that much, but you're able to function the next day. You're multitasking, calling people at night, you're on the phone all night. That is considered the time when your body should be resting, secreting growth hormone like peptides, that will, enhance your longevity and protect your heart. But if you're staying awake through the night, that's very not safe for you to continue to do that. So you definitely need to come in for an assessment.
Okay, Medley, your program is so educating. Oh, keep it up. Thank you very much, Emmanuel George from Asaba. Who is this? There are quite a people are asking questions about masturbation, pornography. Okay, who is this one? Someone says a sex addict. Hello, hi Cecil and Pauline. Is having a particular meal like food, like liking food and addiction, what's the way out? I think we talked about food now.
Yeah, absolutely. Food is pleasurable, right? We release dopamine. All these addictive behaviors or substances release dopamine, which is the pleasure hormone that makes you feel on top of the world. So food also does that because there are chemicals in the food that make you feel that way. Like if you have a nice burger or whatever does it for you, you have that high,
right.
But then eventually, you may have negative consequences like heart disease and other illnesses.
Okay, this person, you didn't write your name. You said, can someone be under addiction by spiritual attack or environmental influence?
Okay, I'm just going to go for this. I'm just going to dive right into it. We need to stop over-spiritualizing hormonal things. Yes, there is something called spiritual attack, and there is something called, being under spiritual attack. But, the thing that we're talking about is dopamine being released by the brain in response to a chemical that diffuses from your mouth or from your nose into your bloodstream and is carried to your brain and releases certain chemicals in your brain. So it's pathogenetic. It's chemical. It's a chemical disorder. Addiction is a chemical disorder that causes brain damage. So I don't really know if it is okay to lump everything as a spiritual attack. I think that doesn't do full justice to the etiology of addiction.
Dr. Ada, I know you have so much to say and we have so many questions to take, trust me, but we are out of time.
Oh, wow.
I see so many of your messages. Our own donor, Stephen from Benue State, Boko. I'm sorry, I can't take your messages. From Masi, from Asaba, from Lagos, from Ebonyi, from Edo State, Auchi. Ooh, so many messages, so many. I'm so sorry, I can't take this. Maybe I may send some of your messages to Dr. Ada and you get to communicate with her directly and then hopefully get your response. All right, I've been having a chat with consultant psychiatrist at the Olister Wellbeing and Recovery Center, and she is Dr. Ekeako. You've been very, very resourceful for us today. Thank you.
Cecil, thank you. Thank you for making my day. Looking at your outfit, it gave me the lift. Maybe I'm addicted to you a little bit.
Actually, addicted to me. I must be addicted.
A Cecil addiction.
I must be addicted to talking with you, right? For having a chat with you on the phone. I was like, I have to get her on this set. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so what's your addiction? Think about it. Does it give you a high? Do you always want to do it? Then you might want to think about it. You just may be addicted to it. So think about it. My name is Cecil Egbele. This has been the Medley Show, and I guess we'll do this again in another 1 week. Bye-bye.